On Friday, May 22nd, 2026, I locked a question into the Shield protocol workstation. Pre-registration, criteria hashed, nonce committed before the draw, corpus integrity verified against the canonical 34,211 verses of the Urim Thummim version. The question was this: YHWH. Give truth now that you have shortened the days as to what judgment comes next. What came back was not borderline. The mathematics returned a confirmed yes at 99.4% probability. The Dominion Triad, identity, inheritance, and priesthood converging in a single verse, landed 10 times in a 100-verse draw against a corpus baseline of 1.44%. That is a 694% non-randomness index, for 0.6 standard deviations from chance, with a binomial exact p-value of 4 times 10 to the minus 6. Fisher's combined test across all 12 markers came in at 9.66 times 10 to the minus 6. 6 of 6 convergence channels lit. 28 direct textual hits on the criteria words. The father answered. Now I want to walk you through what he said, and how it sits over the headlines of this very day. The lead verse, the first verse drawn, was Job 33:28. He will deliver his life from going into the pit, and his life will see the light. Before any judgment is named, before any darkness is described, the first word from the Father is deliverance. The soul turned back from the grave pit, the life brought out into light. And the draw closes, verse 100, at Luke 1:78 and 9. The rising from on high did look upon us, to give light to them that sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace. The frame of the entire draw, Alpha and Omega, is light overtaking the pit. Whatever judgment is named between these bookends, the covenant faithful are positioned for delivery into the light from the very first word. Now what is named between the bookends? The single most specific eschatological marker in the entire Urim Thummim corpus landed inside this draw, at position 35. Daniel 12:11. And from the time that the daily consecrated sacrifice will be taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate set up, there will be 1,290 days. This is the Daniel 12 clock, the 1,290-day countdown that begins with the suspension of the Tamid, the daily, and the erection of the Shiketz Meshemem, the abomination that desolates. That this verse appears under a question about what judgment comes next in shortened days is not coincidence. The Father is naming the timing framework. The next judgment is being measured against the Daniel 12 schedule, and the measuring imagery confirms it. 2 separate draws of men carrying measuring lines. Zechariah's man with the measuring line in his hand, the angels saying they have gone to measure. The Father is actively weighing what comes next on a calibrated line. Then watch what landed at position 20 in the draw. The word of YHWH to Shemaiah, telling King Rehoboam, "You will not go up or fight against your kinsman. Return every man to his house, because this thing is done by me." A divine halt on an active war preparation between kinsmen. As I record this, the United States and Iran are sitting in a fragile ceasefire that began roughly 3 months ago, after the war that opened on February 20th. Iran is reviewing the latest peace proposal from Washington. The Iranian Foreign Ministry said yesterday that the gaps have narrowed to some extent. Pakistan's army chief is mediating. Trump said he is prepared to wait a few days for the response. Vice President Vance says the United States remains, in his words, locked and loaded. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard threatens to extend the conflict beyond the region if strikes resume. The kinsman conflict on the table is real. The interruption, "This thing is done by me," names where the sovereign authority sits over it. The Father retains the right to halt or release. Whether the ceasefire holds or shatters is being decided over the next several days at the throne, not in Washington and not in Tehran. Now hear position 98. 2 Chronicles 35:20. Pharaoh Necho king of Egypt come up against the king of Ashur by the river Frat, and King Josiah went out to meet him, and he put him to death at Megiddo. Megiddo, Armageddon, the geographic root of Armageddon. And in the same verse, the river Frat, the Euphrates. Kings, Megiddo, and the Euphrates named in one breath inside an end times draw. As I speak, the United States blockades Iranian ports. Iran intermittently blockades the Strait of Hormuz, Brent crude is up nearly 2% on the talks, and Secretary Rubio says any tolling system on Hormuz is, quote, unacceptable. The Mesopotamian theater, the typology of the climactic apocalyptic conflict in the entire biblical corpus, is the active live theater of nations right now. The Father named the typology. The headlines are filling in the map. The judgment content is not vague. The draw indicts covenant-defiling syncretism and the corrupt leadership class that traffics in YHWH's name while serving money and idols. Micah 3:11 landed in the draw. The chiefs govern for a bribe, and the ministers teach for hire, and the prophets divine for money. Yet will they lean upon YHWH and say, "Is not YHWH among us?" This week, the United States Senate broke for recess after the Justice Department unveiled a nearly $2 billion fund to compensate political allies for alleged targeting under the previous administration. A presidential lawsuit against the Internal Revenue Service has settled with a clause precluding the agency from ever investigating the president, his family, or his businesses. A 7-term congressman who pressed for the release of Epstein-related files lost his primary to a presidentially backed challenger. The chiefs govern for a bribe. The ministers teach for hire. The prophets divine for money. And then verse 29, 691, because they love the praise of men more than the praise of Elohim. The indictment is on the leadership stratum that wears the name and transacts for the silver. The Olivet warning surfaced inside the draw at position 43. Matthew 24:5, for many will come in my name saying, I am Messiah, and will deceive many. Whatever the next judgment is, it travels alongside a proliferation of impostors claiming the name. The discernment required in the shortened days is the priestly act of distinguishing the true Mashiach from the many who borrow his title for their own praise. That distinction is not optional in the shortened days. It is the daily work of the royal Levitical priesthood. So what is the Father saying? The clock is running, and it is being measured against Daniel 12. The indictment is on syncretism and the corrupt leadership class. The deceivers are loosed. The Megiddo-Euphrates frame is set, and the live news of this very day sits inside that frame. A kinsman conflict between great powers hangs in the balance, and the sovereign authority over its halt or release belongs to YHWH alone. The tabernacle of David's throne, verse 15, Isaiah 16:5, is being established in covenant truth on the far side of the judgment. And the children of Israel will return and seek YHWH their Elohim, and David their king, in the latter days. For the covenant faithful, those who covenant trust and bear the name, hear the first word of the draw, and hear it again as the last word. He will deliver his life from going into the pit, and his life will see the light. The pit is real. The judgment is real. But those who belong to the covenant are positioned, by the explicit testimony of the lead verse, for delivery into the light. Stand in the priestly inquiry. Honor the name. See the light. Selah.